welcome to Let's Play Gran Turismo 3, episode 98. And where we have just 3 endurance events left, we have completed 7 of them up to this point, and this time we're going to get on with endurance event number 8, which is going to be the special stage Route 11 endurance. And as for the car I'm going to use, well, most of these race cars that I have in my garage I've already used, so I'm going to have a check by distance and see which ones I haven't driven yet. Keep in mind, of course, I'm not going to be driving all of them, obviously, but, you know, it's always worth it to have a look. And, well, I did see someone using this car before, and, well, I did say, of course, I was going to be saving up the Dodge Viper, so yeah, fuck it, let's use it. Let's use the Dodge Viper, because it's a car I've not driven yet. And well, I don't think I need any engine upgrades, but what I am going to do is put on the Super Slicks, and well, I think since I have the money, I'm also going to give this thing an oil change, you know, just to give it a wee bit more horsepower. And that should be all I really need. Alright, let's go to the special stage Route 11 Endurance. Route 11, start of a long night. Also known as the special stage Route 11 All Night. And I'm pretty sure this car is a Toyota GT1, and I think the place where they took that photo was Le Mans, as far as I know. And we win 500,000 credits if we can win this event. Now this I am pretty sure is one of the big ones for the amount of money we can win, because there's this, and there's also Monaco, which also rewards you 500,000 credits, ultimately. And we've got a pretty interesting field here. And ultimately, overall, the competition we have here is a Pagani Zonda race car, which I've already driven, a Mazda 787B, Chevrolet Corvette C5R, definitely driven that, a Toyota GT1, and a Ford GT40. And I think all I'm really going to need is just to remove the driver aids, because I don't need ASM or TCS traction control system. And yeah, let's go. But before we do that, I just need to check something. Yep. Alright, let's go to 50 laps of special stage Route 11. Hopefully we can win. And already off to a reasonable start, and the GT40 is already making contact with the Corvette, but of course that's more or less what I would have anticipated. More or less a clean start up to this point, and already the 787B immediately jumps up to first position, as does the Toyota GT1. Both of them already getting away from the Pagani in the first few corners, as I would have expected. And trying to see if I can go for a manoeuvre on the Corvette. Made a little bit of contact there, but nothing too serious. As of which the Zonda does now retake the first position, and I'm going to suspect it was because of a poor exit out of the second hairpin that ultimately decided that little scaffolding, and it dropped back to 5th position. But again, I'm pretty sure tyre degradation will definitely play a part in this race, so don't think it's over just yet. I'm pretty sure tyre wear will inevitably play a part in this race at some point, and that is precisely where I will be able to get the jump on the 787B, who does now retake first position ahead of the Toyota GT1, who is currently second. The Zonda has now dropped back to third, as of which I've not been able to officially make any manoeuvres as of yet, and already coming up to the end of the first lap, and now I am within the draft of the Zonda, getting a slipstream as I speak, and having to brake early. The rear end does step out just a little bit, but fortunately nothing too serious, and the Zonda at the moment is currently in third position, and it looks as though both the Mazda and the Toyota have already extended their interval, and it is now the Toyota that takes over the lead position over the Mazda at the present time, but I'm pretty sure it will not be too long before they have to pit. I'm hopeful in saying that I will be a competitor in this race before this day is done. I'm currently running in 4th position behind both of them and the Zonda, the way it stands, and it would appear as though at the moment they are extending their lead slightly, but I'm hopeful in saying that I will manage to become a challenger before the day is done, because I'm pretty sure tyre degradation will play a factor at some point. We're only 2 laps in out of 50. I'm hopeful in saying that I will of course manage to eventually get myself up onto the podium eventually, and it would appear as though the Corvette and the GT40 have now been separated, so it looks as though the order of the race has already been decided up to this point, and at the moment I'm not able to place any challenges to the Zonda as the matter stands at the present time, but I'm hopeful in saying that I will manage to close up to him eventually, as I again get some oversteer. Had to shift down into second there so that I would not slide straight into the Armco, and already trying to see if I can close up to the Pagani Zonda as the order currently stands. The 787B is now back up into first position once again, and it looks like it might have an interval to the Toyota. So the 787B is ahead of the GT1 now once again, and not able to make any manoeuvres at the moment on the Zonda, even though I am trying desperately to see if I can look for a passing manoeuvre. I have to get past the Zonda if I'm going to be fighting with the front runners, as of which we have now dropped back of course to the leaders. And this car is pretty loose at the moment, even though my tyres are now warmed up. And trying to look for a manoeuvre, trying to open the door from the Zonda. He literally shuts the door right as soon as I get my foot in, and really had to go aggressive there on the exit if I was going to get that manoeuvre done. But I am now ahead of the Zonda once again. He literally punts me straight into the wall, he does, and I could tell that was intentional. Might have to see if I can give him a little bit of payback there. As we touch again, a little bit of fender rubbing, having to squeeze him over to the pit wall in response, even though obviously that manoeuvre I just pulled off was a lot less harmful than the one he pulled off on me, and he literally forces me into the wall. He's trying to re-overtake me, I'm not allowing that. I shut the door on him just like he did on me, and I think that is not quite redemption. Yeah, just had to get a little bit aggressive there with the Zonda, and even had to force him into the wall there in response to that contact over what he did to me, and it looks as though I might be in third position on merit, although the Zonda is still looking quick. He is not going to let me step away with this one, it doesn't look like, but by God, I'm going to try my hardest to hold on to the third position and literally do whatever it damn well takes for me to hold on to this fucking position. And as long as I know the leaders don't extend themselves too far away from myself, then I might be able to get myself back in contention. And it looks as though the Zonda has now fallen back, so presumably tyre wear is now playing a factor amongst the Pagani Zonda as matters stand. The 787B is now 9 seconds clear of me, and oh fuck me, I clipped the inside wall. Was not meaning to do that. But I think it's fair to say that I'm now up into the 3rd position, and this looks like it could be quite a challenge, although the gap this time is only 8.3 seconds, so I don't think their tyres are going to last much longer, from what I can sympathise. Although, at the moment of course, they do have quite an interval to me, so this is where things could get potentially interesting, as the Toyota now takes 1st position away from the 787B once again, so those two cars are both equally matched it looks like. There is a certain number of corners where the Mazda is quicker than the Toyota, and a certain number of corners where the Toyota is quicker than the Mazda. And that interval is definitely closing, because the gap is now only 8.3 seconds from when it was previously 9.1 seconds. So I'm definitely gaining some time back from what I thought for sure I'd lost in the early stages, but again, I am starting to close in on the leaders. That is confirmed. I say again, I am officially starting to close in on the leaders, presumably because of tyre wear. This could be the chance I need, and the gap is definitely closing itself. So the gap is in its reduction stages. It's now down to 7.3 seconds. One of them has got to pit in only a short space of time as the matter currently stands, and officially I am now starting to close in, and I also set a new best lap time. And the gap has now been reduced, and the Zonda is already in the pits after just 5 laps on that first set of boots, so it looks like he probably will be down in 4th or 5th position, it looks like, by the time we get to the end of this race, but I am officially starting to close in on the leaders by default of me having the preferable tyres. I am definitely closing in on the leaders as the matter currently withstands itself. Just really having to put my foot to the floor as it currently stands, and the gap is now under 6 seconds, so their tyres, I would imagine, are starting to give out up to this point. Doesn't look like they're going to last much longer, and this is probably where the opportunity will present itself for myself to strike upon the prototypes. Doesn't look as though they're going to hold on to their positions much longer, as matters currently withstand themselves. And yep, I am definitely closing in, so tyre wear has got to be the factor that's helping me close in on these two. One of them has got to pit eventually, there is no doubt about that. And I am starting to marginally close in on the leaders, and yep, the gap has definitely reduced itself now. It's down to 4.5 seconds from when it was previously just about 6 seconds. So I'm starting to close in on the leaders lap after lap up to this point. And even though we're only 6 laps into the race, I would imagine it is only a matter of time before I officially get the opportunity to strike. And I'm hopeful in saying that this will be the moment I need for myself to become a contender. Although then again, of course, I am having to push a little bit harder than I usually would, because I am trying to close in on the leaders as best as I can, and also keep the mistakes to a minimum, which is one thing I'm not doing very well. And yet, surprisingly, up to this stage, I have not spun the car yet. But officially, it would appear as though the back markers in this race have pitted, so I would assume the Zonda is going to have to make a total of 9 pit stops the way it currently stands, and it would appear as though the prototypes are not going to last much longer, and it's still 4.5 seconds as it currently stands. So not able to do anything about the Mazda at the moment, but I'm quickly closing in on the Toyota. And he does now come into the pits, and it would appear as though the Mazda is probably going to be a victim to myself becoming one with the draft. I would imagine methodically he will probably pit either this lap or the next lap, dependent on how long his stop will be. But I can safely say that I am closing in on the leaders. Or the leader, I should say, since the Toyota pitted. So, tyre degradation is definitely playing a part for me to hopefully take the lead. Even though my tyres are starting to get some signs of wear, I would imagine the Mazda is in a much worse state of affairs as it would stand with that set of boots compared to me, because my tyres are still able to push themselves and hopefully this will be where I manage to get a shot at taking the lead. And he's in the wall. So those tyres on the 787B have literally got to be dead. He runs wide, he must be entering pit road, and surprisingly he does not enter pit road. But I think that's probably going to hurt his chances of retaking the lead, because he must be on a worn set of boots by now. If he lost that much time. Whoa, excuse me. Fucking hell. Can you mind not trying to punt me out of this race? And as I would have predicted from the AI, they are intentionally trying to wreck me. But at the same time, I more or less have to do the same thing to them, because it's basically a war zone once you get out on the track. Pretty much one of those all is fair in love and war scenarios, basically, is what it is with the AI in this game, because they really do not care if you are alive or dead. They will literally try and take you out if they have the opportunity to do so, and they will take it. That's one thing I've learned from this game over the years, and it's definitely not a pleasurable feeling to see those sorts of manoeuvres happen in real life, I can tell you that much. Especially if you know very well you're putting another driver at risk with that sort of manoeuvre. Motorsport is still dangerous, folks. you've heard it from someone who is a fan of motorsports himself. And is he going to be pitting in this lap? And yes, he is. He pits in, finally, at the end of lap 9. The Toyota is looking like he's starting to close in now, but I don't think he's going to take second position in time, because pit stops are pretty fast in this game. Although dependent on knowing if or when the Toyota will have to pit again, which I think is going to be at the end of lap 14. I would imagine overall he's going to have to make a total of 7 pit stops, I mathematically predict. But officially, I am now out in the open. The Toyota is starting to close in on me since he's on a fresher set of boots than myself, but at the moment I can safely say that I have the advantage. I'm predicting in terms of time this will probably take me around about 1.5 hours, or somewhere just over that. Yeah, probably somewhere over 1.5 hours by the time this event is done. Because I don't predict the halfway point will officially determine what my final finishing time is going to be, but of course the unity of myself with the super slick strategy is once again working wonders, and as I classically make contact with that outside wall, figured that was going to happen sooner or later. I am now tearing myself away from the leaders as it currently stands, as a result of me being on the preferable tyres. So the Toyota is starting to close in, but the margins at the moment are very minimal in accordance to what lap times I'm currently setting. So what I mean by that is I don't think the Toyota is able to do anything about myself, and made a little bit of an error there, but managing to catch the rear end before any further damage was invoked. And it looks as though the GT40 is now in the pits. Wait a minute. No, wait a minute. The GT40 is back there. Yeah, that's got to be the Corvette. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting confused. Yeah. So, I'm currently leading at the present time over the Toyota GT1, who is second. Then it's the Mazda 787B in third, followed by the Chevy Corvette, it looks like, who is now taken. Who looks like he has now taken the 4th position away from the Zonda, even though he could still be behind him, and at the back, as per usual, it is the GT40. And as for me, I'm trying to set some reasonably quick lap times on this. Going to be a one set of tyres very shortly. And furthermore, yes, to any of you who happen to be my GT1 viewers, you probably know very well that this was the same car that I used in the first of the 2 Route 11 races in GT1, where I was at Route 11, and of course that road there takes it to the old circuit before this one was officially created, or at least before this layout was created, I should say. And it's certainly a much better layout than the original one is, if you want my honest opinion. Because this layout of circuit is easier to get around. And just a wee bit of contact there with that outside wall, as of which that is where the original circuit is before they created this layout. Cut off, of course, for this game, just like the Grand Valley East and Putnam Stage Route 5 layouts have officially been cut off for this game compared to when they were in the previous two games, although Route 11 was not in GT2. The other reason why I chose the Viper for this event is purely because I wanted to keep this linked, of course, to tradition which I started in the original game, which is Gran Turismo 1, and basically what I did, of course, was that I was driving a Viper in that race, and I decided I would pretty much more or less do the same thing for this race. And I can safely say that at the moment I am just dominating this race. Although the Toyota is not too far behind me, because the gap at the moment is only 10 seconds. But again, I'm pretty sure that I can probably go a reasonable number of laps before I need to pit, because my tyres at the moment are looking pretty good compared to these AI. I'm managing to keep a threshold on the leaders as the matter currently stands, and just a wee bit of contact there with that outside wall, but again, the way things are currently standing, I'm going very well up to this stage. So, don't think it's going to be too much longer before I make my first pit stop, although it's basically going to be tyre wear and how much I'm struggling to keep the car under control that will officially determine when I make the first pit stop. Although, at the moment, of course, I'm just happy to keep setting as reasonable lap times as possible the set of boots that I'm currently using. And all I really did was just give this thing an oil change, and I think that's probably benefiting me in terms of what I've already managed to achieve here at Route 11 so far. And even though the Toyota does continue to close in, it doesn't look like he's going to overtake me for the lead, because I had a 17-second lead on him once we came down to the end of lap 9, and this is now lap 14, so I'm predicting he will pit in again this lap. And I'm also predicting he will probably pit right before the final lap as well, judging by what I can understand. We've got a pretty interesting competition here at Route 11, if I do say so myself. Not quite all three of the prototypes like we had in the World Championship, but definitely two of the heavy hitters from what I could understand. And all it really took was me to just give this thing an oil change, along with... oh fuck. Along with also putting on the Super Slicks to rightfully prove why exactly my unity with the Super Slick Strat is so promising. Toyota is now in the pits once again, so I would imagine the undercut between those two is probably proving to be more powerful than the overcut as the matter currently stands. And the 787B does now retake second position as the matter currently stands, and after just 14 laps in this race I am now coming up to overlapping the GT40, who is clearly looking like the most inconsistent car in the field unfortunately, and probably also the slowest from what I can understand. I think the Zonda by now has officially managed to separate himself from the Corvette. And I am currently trying to see if I can overlap the GT40. And he makes a little bit of contact with me, but again, it's not going to be too long before I officially overlap him. And he is going to be aggressive with me, I can feel it. But that's why I just dove to the inside, because I had a feeling something like that would probably happen. It was undeniable from what I could sympathise, and already I have now put the GT40 one lap down. And all it really took me was 15 laps to do it. So the GT40, out of all of his back markers, will clearly be the main one, it looks like, as he once again slides into the first turn, as he's basically been doing throughout this race. But yet somehow, because this is not the 1960s, that car has not caught fire, like it usually would if it did that much wrecking. Considering that's basically what race cars used to do a lot of the time whenever they crashed. They usually caught fire. If you were living in either the 60s or 70s. That's basically what race cars were like back then. They were also pretty difficult to drive as well, because power steering did not become a thing in motorsport yet, from what I could understand. And I think this is probably going to be somewhere like over 130 miles for how much I've driven. It'll probably be pretty good in the end, considering the circumstances I've had to face in the early stages. At the 30-minute mark now, so this race probably will be somewhere over 1.5 hours, but probably also less than an hour and 2/3, which is basically an hour and 40 minutes. And I'm now starting to close in on the Corvette, who apparently does not look like he's going to stay on the lead lap for much longer. I am starting to close in on the Corvette C5R, and as of which I now have a 28.3 second lead over the Toyota. And the Master is going to be pitting in again at what appears to be the end of lap 18, because he originally pitted in on lap 9, but the Toyota has been looking quicker by default of tyre strategy. But for me, at the present time, I am just holding on to a relatively steady lead. Pretty much a fat 28 second lead over the Toyota, as he now officially takes over second position ahead of the 787B, and the Corvette is looking unlikely to stay on the lead lap, as of which both the Viper and the Corvette both competed in the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2000, And I think it was the Viper that emerged victorious in the end, even though it was probably the Corvette, from what I could understand. I don't know for sure, but I think it was the Corvette that emerged victorious originally, and obviously it was also the Corvette that emerged victorious in the Amateur GT World Championship over the Viper by finishing second. And makes a little bit of contact with me. Don't think that was intentional, but he touched my rear just a wee bit. Well, might have made a little bit of contact there with the splitter, but don't think there's anything wrong with that. I would say it looks like everything at the moment is okay, and he gets back on the lead lap quite forcefully there. Still, gotta say, I will give him points for that, because he does not want to go a lap down. Although, because he is going to be pitting in again very soon, I would imagine, he will inevitably go one lap down, it looks like. And the Toyota is now closing in on the Ford, so I don't think the GT40 is going to last much longer before he officially goes a lap down to both the prototypes. Meanwhile, I myself am currently being held up by the Corvette, and trying to see if I can overlap him officially, but he's not wanting to give up without a fight, and boy, he has given me a fight. But I have eventually managed to prosper in ultimately putting in that one lap down. So, coming up towards the completion of 18 laps as it stands, and it would appear as though almost half the field by now has officially been overlapped. As which I'm pretty sure myself with both the GT1 and the 787B will inevitably overlap the rest of the field. And I am starting to close in on the Zonda, it looks like. Although it does not appear as though it will be too long before I make pit stop number 1. And the Mazda is now in the pits once again, which leaves the Toyota to go onwards. In this race, it looks like, as a result of his undercuts, and also because of his raw speed, it would appear as though he has now separated himself from the Mazda, and he could very well hold on to second place for the rest of this race, methinks. Even though the 787B was my main rival for the GT World Championship, even then of course, I did manage to emerge victorious by winning 7 out of 10 races, and this could very well be a similar situation, considering the tyre wear has been quite phenomenal up to this point in the race. I've gone as long as 19 laps on this set of boots. I don't see any reason why I can lose this up to this point once I've made my first stop, even though it will have to be coming on pretty soon because my rear tyres are starting to show some wear, it looks like, and the Corvette is once again in the pits as I correctly anticipated, pretty much at the end of lap 18 now, as he has made a total of 3 pit stops mathematically up to this point, because he's pitting in every six laps, it looks like, so that will mathematically equate to him making a total of precisely 8 pit stops overall by the end of the race. Doesn't look like my rear tyres are going to hold up for much longer. As for the front tyres, well, I would say they've probably got a couple more laps left in them, but the rear tyres I think are going to be my main concern. And got a little bit loose there as I came off that banked corner, as of which a lot of corners around this circuit are banked very slightly. Not all of them are completely flat. Though these tyres are not going to last much longer. I did have a problem similar to this at Laguna Seca last time out, where I was wondering if I should just be stubborn and keep the tyres going for as long as I can, or if I should just make the sensible decision and just pit in earlier than I usually would. And well, I would imagine I do have to pit very soon, and oh shit, I just spun. And it took me just over 20 laps to finally spin the car, but there we are. I spun the car and it took me 20 laps to spin it for the first time, as of which I very much anticipated that was going to happen. And even though the Toyota has now closed in drastically over the past couple of laps, you will have to pit in again at the end of this lap, and as of which I think I'm more or less going to do the same, because, well, I don't think my rear tyres are going to last much longer. So I'm going to have to pit in at the end of this lap. I don't think I can go any further on these rear tyres. These rear tyres look like they're pretty much done up to this point. Even though they haven't entered the red territory, they are very close to entering that sort of territory where the tyres go flat. So this time I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to pit in at the end of this lap, because then I will know that I'm staying ahead of the Toyota, which, by the way, of course, does have some reasonable pace over the 787B, pretty much on pure pace alone in its head. And coming into the pits now after 21 laps of driving, as does the GT1. I figured after that spin it was time for me to pit, so that's exactly what I'm doing. And it is now water time. Just having a sip of water as I now exit the pit lane. Coming off pit road now, I stay ahead of the Toyota, who looks like he will stay ahead of the Mazda because of his raw speed, as of which the Toyota has looked very quick in this race. Very much similar, of course, to the likes of the MX-5 that I saw at Apricot Hill, as well as also being the Honda NSX at Trailer Mountain not too long ago, because in both of those events, even though he was making rather a lot of pit stops during the race, ultimately his raw speed on track has officially been the factor that has kept him ahead of the third placed car, which at the moment is still the 787B, but again, the Toyota is on fresher tyres. This probably will be an interesting battle for about the next 4 or 5 laps, I would predict. Although, since I'm now on fresh rubber, I can basically run like hell. As in, like, basically, I can go flat out for probably the next 7 laps before I have to pit again. because since I knew the Toyota was right on my ass, I figured it was probably best for me to pit in at the end of lap 21 if it was right behind me, and then I wouldn't have any issues trying to suppress the matter at hand with myself trying to hold on to the interval as the matter currently stands. So 1.8 seconds is now the gap to the Toyota, as of which we both came in on the same lap, meaning that my second and final pit stop will be coming on lap 42, as far as I know, which means this will be a two-stop race, and the Toyota is right on my ass. And he dives to the inside. I cannot reopen the door. I'm trying my hardest to get an opening, having to make a little bit of contact there for good measure, because I know that's what the Toyota would have done to me if he saw that gap. I had to get it done. I really had no choice, because I knew the Toyota was going to be ahead of me going into the corner. I really had to get forceful in order to get myself back in contention for the lead, and it looks as though the Toyota right now is just up ahead of me, considering he is on grippier tyres, but is also on pretty much lifeless tyres compared to me, because I managed to go 3 times the distance of what the Toyota was going on those tyres. So I would imagine this race will probably be somewhere over 130 miles in terms of distance. I would think it's probably going to be about 133, 134 miles is what me thinks. And I am starting to close in on the Toyota once again, as of which I am now in the draft. Not shifting up into 6th gear because I'm not at the red zone, but very much keeping myself in check with the Toyota, and by the time he pits again, that will officially be when I will manage to retake the lead. Although the only other time where I've had the AI take the lead away from me during a endurance event on pure pace alone, I think was Trial Mountain, because I was in a pretty heated battle with the Honda NSX for a number of laps in my Toyota Supra RZ, and oddly enough, I did eventually manage to win the race overall when the Honda pitted in again, and ultimately that was precisely how the margin itself had eventually proven to be a total of 45 seconds. And yes, slipstreaming is quite powerful in this game, which is the reason why the speed increases so suddenly if you're able to get a toe in and you're not affected by dirty air. You can definitely catch a slipstream quite easily if you're behind another car in this game. And we're side by side as we head into the chicane, not attempting any manoeuvres on the Toyota that time. Figured I had to be smart about it, and that's exactly what I was. And trying to stay within the slipstream of the Toyota, and this could be a new PB, and yes it is. Although it wasn't by much, as I'm now braking early for turn 1, which is quite a sharp hairpin turn from what I can understand, and into the right-hander, as of which both of these are pretty much 90 degrees in terms of their angles, pretty much right angles if you ask me, as we now head for these 2 consecutive hairpins. And the GT40 is now in the pits after 24 laps, and I think is meant to be coming in about every 12 laps, so presumably that's pit stop number 2 for the the GT40. But ultimately, because of how slow he has been, he has not been a contender, unfortunately. Anyways, 24 laps are down, and still 26 remain, although it will be 25 at the end of this one, because this is pretty much the halfway lap. And the Toyota is giving me quite a reasonable scrap at the moment, so he's not letting me walk away with this one, I can tell you that. And had to brake early. I knew he was going to dive to the inside. This is not the point in the race where I start making aggressive manoeuvres. And I got a little bit loose there, as of which the oversteer was what prevented me from getting a glimpse of battling with the Toyota. Although somehow, as a result, I still get another fastest lap, and the Toyota is now ahead of me. So this could end up being one hell of a finish. Although I'm pretty sure the Toyota will pit in probably right before the final lap anyway, so I don't think he's officially got that many opportunities of catching me. So he may lead at the present time, but ultimately, because he has to make a total of 7 pit stops during this race, that will ultimately be what hands the lead back over to me by the time he pits in again on what I presume will be the end of lap 28, as of which he has already made 3 pit stops up to this point, and 28 will officially be when he makes pit stop number 4. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure I can keep these tyres going up to the end of lap 42, which is when I will be making my second and presumably final pit stop of the day, or the night I should say, because this is a night race. And once again, trying to see if I can get a slipstream from the Toyota, as of which the power of drafting is quite powerful in this game. And this time I'm not right on his ass as I make the manoeuvre, and I do now manage to officially retake the lead, and also set a new best lap time in the process. This has been quite a titanic scrap for the past couple of laps, as I would have predicted it to be. We're both literally able to draft ourselves off one another. I assume that's probably because we have trust for one another, but again, in this game the AI really don't care about sportsmanship. They'll basically do whatever it damn well takes. Oh shit! Come on, don't slide, don't slide, don't slide. Okay. Yep, okay. I'm dragging on the walls. Okay, please get off them. Okay, thank you. So, made a little bit of contact there with those outside walls, but again, I don't think it really matters too much, because I didn't really do it to gain a position. I mean, some people might call that cheating, but for me at least, I don't think I was really cheating too much, because I wasn't attempting any manoeuvres on the Toyota. And you might have the interval at the present time, but again, there have been a certain number of corners where the Toyota has not been quite as strong as myself, and I would assume, given the circumstances, that will be where I managed to retake the lead. So, coming up to the completion of 27 laps, we have nearly been racing for an hour now. Toyota slides up, and he is in the pits. No, sorry, my mistake, he's not in the pits. He will be pitting in next time around, but I am really within the slipstream, and trying to see if I can get a manoeuvre done, but unfortunately nothing at the moment is presenting itself, and little bit of contact there with that inside wall, even though it does point out. And the 787B is once again in the pits after 27 laps, so the Toyota and myself both have reasonable pace to compensate, and I'm pretty sure this will be where we manage to extend ourselves away from the rest of the field. We have no loss of confidence between us that we will finish both first and second in this race. As of which I'm pretty confident this will be the lap the Toyota pits in. Those tyres do not look like they're going to last for another lap, as of which he's been pitting in every 7 laps up to this point. And he gives me just a little bit of a touch there, but is he going to attempt to shoot to the inside? And he bumps me. Motherfucker. Okay, I take back what I said about trust. There is no trust out on the circuit. Because that was fucking massacre, that was. What the fuck? What the actual fuck? You just literally punted me and then you punted me again. Fucking hell. And I slid into the wall somehow. And yep, I completely fucked up my entry through to that chicane. As of which, I must admit, that is a very blind corner right before the right-hander and then the left-hander. From what I can understand. That's what it is. And that's all. Although I basically need all the intervals I can get to officially stay ahead of the Toyota. Because it will only be a matter of laps before he manages to come back and start punting my ass once again. Although I'm pretty confident we will stay both first and second, because the 787B in terms of on-track pace, he has been well behind us. He's basically been well behind us in terms of overall track pace. And what I'm trying to do now, since I am in the clean air, I'm trying to see if I can improve on my best lap time as I'm power sliding through the final corner. Across the line, I go now to completing lap number 29, and I now set a new best lap time that is ultimately 1.5 seconds quicker than my previous PB. Although, to be completely honest, I will admit, I did cheat a little by using the outside walls of turn 1 and also the outside wall of the hairpin, which is ultimately where I gained most of my time. But again, I have to basically do whatever it takes to stay ahead of the Toyota before he starts punting me again. As in, like, I've literally got to do whatever it takes to increase that gap by literally shutting the door on him if he gives even the slightest of attempts to ultimately try and hunt me down and basically shoot me. And basically shoot me. I'm also braking early for the chicane because I know how these AI continue to keep diving into that chicane, because they literally just keep diving into it like they honestly don't care what it is. And it looks as though I am now going to overlap the GT40 once again. And it slides into the wall once again, so this will be the second time that I've overlapped the GT40 all race long. And I would think before this race is done, I will have probably overlapped him at least 3 times by the time this race is over. And again, even though he's a back marker, he still continues to be aggressive with me. Super aggressive, I might add. Because, again, like I said before, these AI just literally don't care if you're dead or alive. They will literally do whatever it takes to make you trip up. Even then, of course, if you're not the one responsible. And the GT40 throughout this race, in my honest opinion, he has just been reckless. Because he's just literally been wrecking pretty much every lap. He's just literally got no concentration whatsoever on this circuit. It's almost like for most of the corners he dives into, he just literally goes straight into the wall. As you can see by pure coincidence. He's just basically clipping those walls literally every lap. He's been an irritation to me, but hopefully he can also be enough of an irritation to the Toyota as well, which will allow me to extend my lead even further. If it keeps going like this, and 32 laps we are now on to, 31 I should say have now been completed, and we are nearly 1 hour into this event. And so far I have been the most consistent driver of them all throughout this race. And when I say that, I mean I am basically the driver who has crashed into the wall the least amount of times up to this point. Doesn't look like the Toyota is too far behind me, but again, I can go another 10 laps on these tyres before my race is done. And then, once my race is done, I would say everything else will just wait and see what happens. But at the moment, I'm looking pretty good for first place, as far as I know. So I predict the GT40 at the end of this race will be at least 3 laps down before this race is done. The Corvette, I think, will probably also be 3 laps down before this race is done, is what me thinks. And as for the Zonda, well, he will probably remain 2 laps down. Although I really couldn't tell you for sure if I have or have not overlapped the Zonda yet. And it looks like the Toyota is now starting to close in on the GT40, and he's trying to overlap him, and it looks as though he has now cleared him. So this race is not over by any stretch of the imagination, and I would imagine I've already overlapped the Zonda as well, so I would think before this thing is over he too will probably be 2 laps down. And well, I'm not sure about the Corvette, but I think he will stay 2 laps down by the time this race is done, dependent on how long it takes me to overlap him, considering he is looking like he will go 2 laps down. To myself and the Toyota. Still continuing to brake early for the chicane because my balls are not brave enough to literally dive straight into the chicane. I don't think I necessarily have the balls to be big and just dive into that chicane, because I've seen the mistakes the AI have made through that chicane, as I now hit 170 miles an hour once again, it looks like. Hitting 170 as I head down the front stretch. The Corvette is still continuing to shut the door on me. He does not want him to overlap him like he did the first time around, and going round the outside as we head up to the hairpin, hoping he will not dive bomb me. He will try and overtake me round the outside, but he is unsuccessful, unfortunately for him, and I am now officially clear of the Corvette. As I learned, of course, from Rhino GT4, curbs are bad. Do not try and attempt to use the curbs, because they will bite you. Curbs are bad, is basically what I'm trying to say. Come on, don't hit me, don't hit me, don't hit me, don't hit me. Okay. He did not hit me this time. Thank God. And I am officially 2 laps ahead of the Corvette now, who is running in, I think, 5th position, because the Zonda is probably up there with the Mazda, as it looks, by the way it looks at the moment. So his back markers are helping me out just a little bit. Although the Toyota has been getting quicker and quicker every lap, but again, he will not be staying in that reducing position much longer, because next time around I am pretty confident in saying he has to pit, and then when he does, that will officially when I can manage to stay in the lead for hopefully the rest of the race. So 35 laps I am now coming through to completing this time around, and it would appear as though at the present time, like, nothing will officially be my main concern. So, here we are once again. 35 laps are done, and we still have another 15 to go before this race is finished. So as I conventionally predicted, I'm starting to pull away from the GT1 as the matters currently stand. And the margin at the moment between myself and the Toyota GT1 is currently 37.4 seconds. But I'm pretty sure that margin will reduce itself as we head into pretty much the dying laps of this second stint. Fortunately, however, I will not have to be on this set of boots for much longer. As I only have another 6 laps to go on this stint before I have to pit in again. And hopefully that should be my second and final pit stop of the day. And then, once that is done, I should be able to go the rest of the distance on my my third set of super slick tyres. So the margin itself is once again starting to reduce itself, and oh fuck me, I went too tight into that chicane. And having to correct the spins that I'm currently making, as the 787B is once again in the pits at the end of 37 laps, while the Zonda, I would think, has gone about probably 18 laps on that set of tyres, so assumingly I would think he is now 1 lap down. But as far as the results between myself and the Toyota GT1, I would say it's pretty clear to say Toyota is going to be more or less behind me, because his next stop will be on lap 42, and that will be precisely when my next stop will be taking place, and ultimately that will be where I will officially manage to take a hold of the lead, it looks like. So, we still have laps to go after this one, and then once I am done with those, I should be just about, I assume, another 4 laps on this stint before I come in for stop number 2. So I'm continuing to just marginally click off the laps as the Corvette is now in the pits once again at the end of his 36th lap, I would assume now, as of which I'm now on to lap 39 in the space of just 72.5 minutes. Toyota overtook me briefly after my first pit stop. I was able to persevere once he made the pit stop at the end of lap 28. It was up to the halfway point where the Toyota had pretty much led me, and then suddenly once he came into the pits, that was officially what effectively gave me the race, and almost sliding straight into the outside wall there, with my front end pointing out. I almost thought for sure I was going to crash, but fortunately I did not. And I should have just about 3 more laps to go on this stint, and then once I'm done with that, there should be just about 8 laps to go. And when I say that, I mean basically by the time I've made my final pit stop. And I think it's fair to say that I probably will stay ahead of the Toyota, because even though he is closing in, his tyres do not look like they will be lasting much longer. It appears. And I would think up to this point the finishing order has more or less been decided. Here's what methinks, and I'm now 22.4 seconds clear of the Toyota, so even though he is closing in, he is not closing in by enough to become a threat before the end of this race, because I know for sure his tyres will not last long enough to keep up with my far more superior super slicks. But he really is giving it a good old scrap to catch up to me. Although this race is not over yet until the second stop has been made, and then hopefully after that everything should be okay. Hopefully. So 10 laps to go, and 2 more laps until the second pit stop will be made, and then we will have just 8 laps left before this race is done, and then once it is done, we will have just 2 endurance events remaining. So, not pushing particularly hard at the moment, because I figure it's probably best for me to savour my car until I make the pit stop. as of which I went about as long as 21 laps on the previous set of tyres I had, and I'm more or less confident I can do the same thing again. As of which, tyre degradation is not as much of an issue here as it was at Gran Valley, considering I literally had to pit in pretty much every 15 laps once the tyres had officially reached their critical point. And ultimately, everything as a result of that. Everything else, I would say, is basically history. So this will be the lap when I pit, because I know for sure these tyres will not be able to go much longer, unless I was really brave enough to attempt a one stop. But again, I'm not going to do that. I don't see any point in risking it, so I'm just going to hold on to what I already have, and I would think up to this point by now the order of the race has pretty much been decided. So the Toyota is starting to close in once again. The gap is only 18 seconds now, although it won't fluster me too much because he will have to pit at the end of this lap, since his tyres are only able to go about as long as seven laps. So after this we will have just 8 laps left before this event is done. Then, once it is done, we will now have just 2 endurance events remaining, as of which next up we will have the Tokyo Endurance, and then following that we will have the Monaco Endurance. And yeah, my tyres are slipping and sliding, so I'm going to have to pit in this lap. Don't think the tyres can withstand much more of the torture. And now I can sip my water once again. Because, yeah. Also, furthermore, I like how literally once we enter pit road that they literally have the garages and the doors right next to where exactly the garages are stationed, and they also have a tow truck in there as well, presumably if someone retires. But again, because mechanical failures are not a thing in this game, obviously no one is looking like they will have DNF'd, and officially I am able to go up to the end of this race on this set of boots. But again, by pure comparison to the AI, I know for sure will not be able to go to the end. Because even though the Toyota is quick, he does not look like those tyres will be durable enough to make it the rest of the distance, so we will have to pit in at the end of the next lap, it looks like, and would appear as though this race will pretty much be won by me, and a relatively quick outlap because it was a sub 2 minute time, and replay save is now complete after 43 laps. I'm trying to do up to this point is just see if I can improve on my previous PB, which does not look likely because, well, my previous PB probably looks unbeatable unless I use the walls again, and up to this point in the race I don't see any point in doing that, so I'm just going to keep it clean, more or less. At the end of this race, I'm going to keep it clean. It is what me thinks. And this, of course, is more or less what my lap times would be. And pretty good for an actual first lap on the tyres, because I set a 151.6, and I think I cocked up the entry to this lap because I fucked up pretty badly on the exit of that first corner, it looks like. Although at least I can say I'm trying, and I missed the braking zone completely. And yeah, okay, I'm using the walls. Literally power sliding myself through that pair of hairpin turns there, it looks like, or dare I say. Although I don't think this is going to be worthy of a new personal best, because again, it really doesn't matter if I do or don't go for the best lap overall, because it would appear as though this lap is not going to look like it will be representable enough to beat my previous PB. But again, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Okay, well, still reasonable in the end. Still in the high 150s, it looks like. And that's all. Just really trying to see if I can get every rev I can get out of this V8 engine. Pretty much all the RPMs I can get out of this thing. To see if I can maybe improve on my previous PB. It will surprise me if I do manage to do that. Although one thing I can confirm for sure is these tyres will definitely make it to the end. Because I went as long as 21 laps on the first set of tyres, and then I made it up to lap 42 for the second stint, so I would think this will more or less be another one of those endurance events where I wind up winning with the freshest set of boots overall. It more or less looks like. Just trying to see if I can set a reasonable number of laps with the low 151s, potentially high 150s. That's more or less what we're doing at the moment. Just trying to see if I can do anything about my previous PB, maybe see if I can set a lap time in the high 149s maybe. Wouldn't be too much of a bad suggestion up to this point, I don't think. Although the GT1 is still continuing to close in. So this battle ain't over yet. And overall, on the whole, this has been a pretty exciting race. Even though it's only really been a two-man battle for pretty much the entirety of this race, at the very least I can say that I have actually been challenged for the lead. And we're both setting reasonable enough lap times to keep our, keep ourselves going. And let's see what happens this time. Okay, well, don't think I need to push much harder for these final 3 laps. The gap is still 10 seconds to the Toyota, so since I would imagine he's going to pit right before the final lap, that will officially be where I manage to win the race overall, purely my tyre mileage. And oh look, it's the GT40, which I've now overlapped for the 3rd time in this race. Officially. So just keeping it nice and cool. Going to be pushing too hard up to this point. I think I'm just going to be taking it easy for the remaining couple of laps in this race. And oddly enough, I set a new best lap time as a result of me going easier on the car itself. A little bit of a bounce there off the curb, but again, don't think that's going to affect me too much because essentially, it probably does look like I'm going to win this race with relative ease. And now, of course, this is the penultimate lap. We will have just one lap to go following this one, and then that should be the race. As of which, once again, my unity, of course, with tyre longevity has been paying off hugely for the past couple of events. And it won't surprise me if I win another F1 car up to this point. Here's what methinks. Although I really don't know if I have or haven't put the Mazda a lap down up to this point. Anyways, coming across the start-finish line now to starting the final lap here at Route 11. I know for sure the Toyota is going to pit in, and indeed he does. Pits in right before the start of the final lap. Presumably he's going to try a Lewis Hamilton strat and try and see if he will take the fastest lap of the race overall, which basically appears to be a trend that's been going on in F1 over the past 2 years. At least it's basically been that way since 2019, considering we are already in 2021, and officially this game I can now say is 20 years old. One of very few things I can say that's about the same age as Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, as well as also technically being the same age as the Ben Stiller film Zoolander. Which, oddly enough, of course, were two popular films released in 2001. Among other things that were very popular in 01. And so here we are, heading through the chicane now for the final time here at Route 11, and I do it by crashing, as I would have anticipated it was going to happen sooner or later. But again, it's fine, because I had no opposition, and officially, there we go. It is victory at special stage Route 11. And now we wait for everyone else to get across the finish line. How wonderful. The Corvette pits in right before he crosses the finish line, because that I assume is going to be his final pit stop, but it won't make any difference because he will finish once he's made that pit stop anyway. So in the end of that, I won by 36.4 seconds over the Toyota GT1. The Mazda 787B finished in third, nearly a full lap behind me, and we basically overlapped the rest of the competition twice. So the Pagani Zonda Rose car finished in fourth over the Corvette C5R, and then at the back, who was 3 laps down, it was the GT40. Anyways, money time, and we get a staggering 500,000 credits, pretty much 500,000. And so that is your final finishing order. And again, because the GT40 was literally so terrible throughout that race in terms of his handling, he ultimately finished 3 laps down. So basically a whole lap behind the rest of the field. And I assume the main reason why I overlapped the Zonda twice was because of his pit stop cycle. Anyways, prize car time. And what are we going to win today? We win... Oh. Yeah, we win another Chevy Camaro if this was the first time for me winning it. I'm pretty sure I already have one of these things. But anyways, there we go. That was the Route 11 Endurance, and we now have just 2 events left. So we have Tokyo, and then we have Monaco. And well... actually no, I won't give this thing any maintenance, it's fine. So we are now 87.2% complete with the game now, and my win ratio still more or less stabilised. And let's now go and check out our new prize car, even though it won't make any difference because I'm pretty sure that I already have one of these things. And yes I do, because I have this thing which I've not used yet. Well, since this one is basically a dud, I really don't see any point in keeping it, so I'm gonna do the only reasonable thing, and that's just sell it, because I already have one of these things. And so, there we go. Route 11 is now complete, and next time we shall be doing the Tokyo Endurance. And I shall see you all for the Tokyo Endurance. Stay tuned for the next one.